Hello everyone, we are coming to learn something about SURDS. SURD is one of the topics that confuse most students, but I'm coming to break it down for everyone to understand. Before we talk about SURD, let's talk about perfect squares. So what is a perfect square? Whenever you multiply any number by itself, the result is a perfect square. So when you multiply 1 by itself, the result is 1. So 1 is a perfect square. When you multiply 2 by itself, the result is 4. So it means that 4 is a perfect square. When you multiply 3 by itself, the result is 9. It means that 9 is a perfect square. When you multiply 4 by itself, the result is 16. 16 is a perfect square. 25 is a perfect square. Then we go to 6 times 6, 36. 7 times 7, 49. Then we have 64, 81. Then it continues like that. In other words, we can say that a perfect square is a number that can be written as a square of an integer. A perfect square is a number that can be written as a square of an integer. So when I write 1, which is a perfect square, it can be written as 1 square because 1 is a perfect square. When I take 4, 4 can be written as 2 square. 9 can be written as 3 square. 16 can be written as 4 square. 25 can be written as 5 square. Then it continues like that. So all perfect squares can be written as the square of an integer. Okay. Now, whenever you take the square root of any perfect square, you get a whole number. So when I take the square root of 1, which is a perfect square, the result is 1, which is a whole number. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 25 is 5. So the square root of all perfect squares give a whole number. Now, what is a SURD? The root of rational numbers which are not perfect squares are called SURDs. The roots of rational numbers which are not perfect squares are called SURDs. For example, 2 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 2 is a SURD. 3 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 3 is a SURD. 5 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 5 is a SURD. 7 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 7 is a SURD. So I believe you understand what a SURD is now. The root of all rational numbers which are not perfect squares are called SURD. So because 2 is not a perfect square, the square root of 2 is a SURD. 2 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 3 is a SURD. 5 is not a perfect square, so the square root of 5 is a SURD. I believe you are getting it now. It's very simple. The root of all rational numbers which are not perfect squares are called SURD. So in our next lesson, we shall consider the rules of SURD. Thank you very much for watching. Share my videos. I love you. Bye.